Great Future Day. So today's conference, I will like to introduce first that how we will proceed as we go for next 3 hours. So today's conference will proceed as follows. As I will end my speech, my colleague Siddharth Verma will speak for next 10 minutes on the progress of India Future Society and the Future Day. Okay. As the Siddharth speech ended and the next distinguished speaker, Mr. Clyde Christopher and D'Souza from the Singapore. Christopher, should I say Christopher D'Souza or the Clyde D'Souza? I'm not sure. From Singapore, who will speak on digital surrogate, which will also part of his very famous novel Memories with Maya. Okay. As we proceed further and the Clyde speak, then the next distinguished speaker will be Dr. Ilya Stambler from Israel, who will speak on the future of longevity. After the Ilya speak, there will be another talk with the Harish Shah from Singapore. He will speak on future and the prediction and how it relates with the future day. Okay. Next speak after Harish Shah will be by Dr. Miriam Giesen from Germany. She will speak on how we are responsible for the future. Okay. The next speaker after the Miriam Giesen will be Mr. Kus, who is mainly belongs from India, but currently situated in Philippines and working for a Tata Consultancy Services as an engineer. He is from telecommunication sector and he will speak about the future of telecommunication in India and other part of the world. And the last but the most prestigious distinguished speaker, Mr. James Hughes, will speak just after Kus. He is from USA and he will speak on the unemployment which will create due to the technological progress. So this is all our agenda will be, and we will go continue with this agenda as we proceed. Just for information, please keep your mic mute when someone else will speak. This will help to make this broadcast even better for others. You are free to ask any question via on the left side. There's a Q&A icon. Maybe all the Hangout people able to see that icon. You can just click on that icon and ask any question with the speaker. And as the speaker session will be complete, that question will be presented to the speaker to answer the question to you. Okay. I hope you will all enjoy this conference. So let's start with my colleague Siddharth S. Verma. Siddharth, you can continue.
Okay. Hi. So should I post the presentation here or no?
Yeah, go on. But you have a 10 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I will just be very quick.
Yep, please, go on.
So I will open my document and then I will share I will do the screen share, okay?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, just a second.
So Siddharth will going to speak on future day and the progress we made in last 1 year with India Future Society. So is going to go for some presentation with him.
Yeah, just yeah, it is on.
Just hold a second. And
okay, so I am doing the screen share. Okay.
Yep.
Is it visible now?
No, please select this PowerPoint. As a window of screen share, please select the PowerPoint.
Avinash, are you able to see my screen share?
No, not now. Clyde, please be ready with your screen share.
Okay, so now are you able to see now?
Yeah, we are able to see the MS document.
Okay, so yeah, I will just brief quickly. We
Yeah,
have
please.
very less time for now for me.
Okay, yeah, please
Okay,
go ahead.
so Future Day 2014 agenda already Avinash has clarified what is the agenda, as in who is speaking. Uh, we have the list of achievements now. Can you
Okay.
please? I think I'm hearing double voice. Okay, we have the list of achievements, what we have done in 1 year. We started discussing and talking about forming a future society in India in January 2013. Since then, we have made a lot of progress. We have hosted two Future Day events in India on 1st and 2nd of March. We have registered our organization with Government of India. As NGO, we have been publishing and promoting articles by authors around the world. We have designed and developed our website and improved its technical aspects. We have increased the involvement of members and researchers in IFS. We have been promoting future and emerging technologies since then. We have conducted two events for Longevity Day. Elias Tambler will be more familiar with this subject. We have been promoting work on social medias activities, and IFS members have been interviewed several times by national news channels and newspapers of India, like NDTV News Channel interview of Avinash Singh in February 2014 on human immortality, the possibility and how aging is just a disease. Then we have got published in DNA India article on India Future Society in March 2013. Then I was interviewed by the Future and You website founder, Stephen Cobb. That so this is international media. There were other few people who were interviewed along with me, very distinguished speakers. Then we have got published in Prabhat Khabar and few other local newspaper and media person from a national news channel, Hindustan Times, also contacted us for the interview. Apart from this, we participated in several competitions like NASCOM Product Conclave and FICCI. We did not get through the we did not get through the those competitions, but they were willing to support us in future and asked to keep in touch. We got affiliated with prestigious organization Humanity Plus and International Longevity Alliance. We have published 66 articles. So from here, what is our plan? What is the plan of IFS in the coming year? Like let's say for the year 2014-2015. We have been discussing a lot of about crowdfunding ideas, but have not conducted it yet. Listing few crowdfunding ideas and plans for this year as mentioned below. So seminars, conferences, then books on emerging technologies, map of emerging technologies in India, improvement of website to host competition challenges, activities, research projects, and internship foreign and domestic. Take a topic of technology and then make more exploring videos on that. Features of the website, courses, virtual meetup, direct volunteer to particular project, connect students with professor in emerging technologies, meet people from multinational companies, develop a game whose input is BCI and promote it with IFS. BCI project for paralyzed people and a video on that. Educational project, game, information repository, visual library, uh, with different level of complexity from beginners to expert, publication and promotion of articles, increasing an involvement of more members and researchers in IFS, recruit more team members with the help of networking sites, increased an involvement of institute and research labs. Then we are planning to work on this year plan is to work on a project like brain stimulation or natural language processing. Then conduct longevity day on 1st October and future day on 1st March next year. Raise funds, contact media group, affiliation with more organizations. So this was the basic outline. For the next 5 minutes, I will show a presentation. If you have any questions, please ask.
Thank you for nice introduction, Siddharth. I think we are just completed our 15 minutes. So we can move for Clyde and just introduce the Clyde Christopher first. Do you like to present your presentation, Siddharth?
Yeah, just I will just I'll be very quick. Okay.
Yeah, please,
So this
please.
is my presentation. Just very quickly. Okay. Cover day. We have this list of team members, advisory board members, our website and social media. Okay. Outline of this talk quickly. Why India Future Society to spread awareness about future and emerging technologies for masses and use of technology to expand human capacities, practical and practical aspect. Topics we are concerned with: mind uploading, virtual reality, genetics, nanotechnology, life extension, AGI. Then future and transhumanist society exist all around the world, like Stanford Transhumanist Association, Harvard College Future Society, Colin Transhumanist Society, and all these countries. Why future, not past or present? All the effort in research is driving us towards a better future. We have more resources to work towards a brighter world. We have access to better sophisticated technologies. Then companies like Microsoft, GE, Honeywell, IBM, Google, Facebook are all working on cutting edge research and innovation. More technology which was only seen in the research labs are in the hand of real time users around the world. What future holds of? Future of all these things: communication, AI, automobile, space technology, defense. Okay, so these things, and this is our certificate. This is the pictures of the events conducted previously. Okay, so Future Day, it is being organized in many countries. So this is few facts about Future Day. Thank you very much. This is the end of my slide.
Okay, so very quick, Siddharth. You have made
Yeah,
that
it was very
very
quick.
quickly, and so because we have lack of timing, we want that our speaker speak more rather than we. So I like for introduce the Clyde first, and we then Clyde can start his presentation. So Clyde D'Souza is the author and the
Yeah.
creative technology evangelist. He explored technologies such as augmented reality, real-time game engine, stereoscopic 3D, and their influence on human perception. Okay, so the main work he is doing is raised in different part of the world. He is of multicultural environment. Hold a second. He's a multicultural
Yes.
environment and the loves interacting with the people around the world, believing the holding onto the tradition is overrated and the borderless technology-driven world in the future. He just published is the one of the best book is the Memories with the Maya, which is a fiction novel. It is fiction novel and the mix of science and techno noir genre. The story explores the impact of augmented reality in human personal relationship and in society.
Hello.
His aim in writing the book is to
Hello.
bring the ethos of the Transpezium wild story. So this is all about the Christopher. So I would like to invite the Clyde to present his presentation and go on. Please,
All right.
Clyde.
All right. Thanks, Avinash, for the nice, kind introduction, and it's good to be invited by the India Future Society. There was a nice presentation by Siddharth on the aims and the goals of the India Future Society. And for me, as someone is into the creative use of technology as well as an author, an upcoming author, let's call it that way, I would like to see the India Future Society promoting both fiction and non-fiction in science, in literature, to all the the institutes out there that deal with technology, the young people, the young India that's coming up. It would be great to actually get them at grassroots level to start thinking science, to start thinking technology. So that would be a great initiative to have. The presentation I'm doing is a small one today, and it's something that I believe in. I believe that our future is going to be we're going to be digital beings in some way or the other. Now, it might not be mind uploading, in that sense digital, but what I mean is digital is that we will be ingrained with our technology. We will probably become one with our technology. Things like analog streams of thought, of actions that we do, can be digitized right now. So we've been seeing things like prosthetics being driven by mind control, the mind-machine interfaces that are there. Some of you are working on that. So what I mean is we are actually getting digital in some way or the other. So let me switch over quickly to this small presentation on what I mean that we will be digital, and we'll take it from there. The presentation is full screen, so I might not be able to see what I'm presenting, but I believe in the book that I wrote, Memories with Maya, brings about this thing called the digital surrogate. It's like our digital persona or our digital front that we will have in this new age. So what would that be like? I think our digital selves would replace us at work. We will be able to spawn multiple versions of ourselves. So what I mean by that is, once you've digitized your avatar, there's no reason that you should be doing one thing at a time. One avatar could be doing your work, the other one could be out doing something else. It's like the movie Surrogates, only I feel that the digital version is probably the predecessor that will come first before that. We will be able to interact with real people through our surrogates. Augmented reality already is gaining ground in that area. Can you see my slides, or is it gone off?
Is it? Go on.
It's on. Okay. I have a term called teletravel. Now, this is like telepresence, but I believe that we will be traveling all over digitally in the real world, if need be. So we will be able to interact with real people. Humans can see us with augmented reality visors. They're just getting better. Google Glass is the start, but there will be more technologies coming in from where you'll have true see-through augmented reality. Right now we kind of have what we call video see-through, which means there's a camera aimed out at the real world, getting in the analog stream from the camera and presenting it to us on screens which are inside. For example, Oculus Reality is what I call it. The Oculus Rift visor can do that right now. So how would we actually do that? How would we create a digital surrogate of ourselves? Well, work is already being done in that sense. For example, a depth camera, think of the Kinect. It can actually capture your whole body, your actions, even you can create a realistic avatar of yourself, completely digitized, your whole body and everything within seconds. And if you have the depth of that, if you have a depth capture of yourself as well as a room where you're in, you can literally insert yourself into a real environment. So a few years ago, they had the Digital Emily project. Now that's the face that you see on the screen is actually a digital face. She's not real. It's a mapped version of the real girl mapped back on her face, and she can change it. So this is the realism that you can get in our current research that we're doing, or the technology where it's heading. And finally, even on consumer devices, for example, this is a demo that I actually did running on my iPhone, inserting a digital surrogate in a real world environment. I'm using the Mataio augmented reality toolkit for that, and this is a shot through the screen of the iPhone where the camera is, of course, showing you the real room and superimposing a digital version of this dancing girl in situ, and tracked completely the 6 degrees of freedom or 3 degrees of freedom. I don't know for sure, but it's like she belongs in there. Now, if you can see this with augmented reality glasses, once they're available, it will be a digital person in your real environment. So these are some of the themes that I explored in the book, but of course there are more far-reaching advantages to us creating digital surrogates of ourselves. For example, I'd call it pseudo mind uploading, where you can literally have a kind of a 3D robot, a working robot, and upload yourself to it, so you can steer it around. And now this can save a lot in business, in traveling. You don't need to travel around there to get your work done. However, there are more, let's call them, better uses. For example, children who might not be able to attend school can do so virtually. This is again a form of telepresence, but I'd call it a kind of a digital surrogate uploaded to a mechanical device. There are times, for example, when there are outbreaks of diseases all over the world and kids cannot attend school probably. This could be a virtual way of collaborating, of coming together digitally. Or if you're sick and you cannot attend school, your digital persona can take over. So these are some of the things that we can do. And of course, once we're digital, there are semi-automated tasks that we do every day. Now, for that, you don't need to oversee your digital surrogate. You can run artificial libraries, AI libraries that take over tasks, whatever they might be. So, sorry, there is someone else who's pinging me, I think, on the live chat. Nope. Of course, one area is, let's call them for, I call it intimacy or digital intimacy, long-distance relationships. This is, for example, where people are separated for whatever reason. It could be because of soldiers at war. It can be the first space settlers who are away from families. Or it can just be a guy and a girl having a long-distance relationship. We got devices now being done which give you haptic feedback. So in a sense, converting touch, an analog stream into a digital one, transmitting it halfway across the world, and then re-experiencing it back. So analog to analog conversion happening out there. The digital being, of course, the key central point. And of course, this slide, I'm sure, kind of tells you what this is. Durex's Funderware. It's one of the few kind of gizmos that are coming out right now, but this can go a long way as more and more research gets done in. Then we've got So we've got another one out here. This is a company called Accenture did this a long time ago. I think it was probably 2004 or 2005 for old people. We have relatives who are living by themselves alone, and it's very reassuring if they can see, like at a family dinner, they can see family out there. Now, this is a simple video conferencing scenario, but what if she was wearing glasses, augmented reality glasses, and could literally see her family in the room with her? Well, there is some kind of consolation for old people. So that's a scenario where we could look at. And of course, like I mentioned, people at war, people soldiers, long distance, they're all having long distance relationships. And with a digital surrogate in place, we can actually make that a little bit better for the people involved. Here's a scene, finally, which is the big one, which is actually a spoiler from the book, talking about our digital resurrection. What happens? You have a couple who are living a good life, and one person is taken away for whatever reason. Can we recreate them? Can we recreate their memories? Can we, a digital surrogate out there programmed to actually not replace that person because they're not there yet? And you must have seen the movie Her, where they showed a very advanced form of artificial intelligence. We are not there yet, but meanwhile, at least help in the grieving process by having, we have photographs, this is just maybe 10 steps ahead of that, of having the person walking around the room. This is from the movie Minority Report. I'm just using a few slides, a few screen grabs to show you that effect of Tom Cruise and, kind of interacting with his a hologram of his wife. So I believe that we are transhuman, and digital resurrection is our birthright. That's my take on where the future is going for us. And as digital, as humans, we have a digital future. So let me stop my slide there and get back.
Yeah, wonderful presentation by Clyde. It's really interesting, and
thank you.
We are really like to work on such topic if we get some fund or something from the people like government or some big guy like Dimitri and so on. But I have a question regarding your presentation. I was in a conference in a couple of weeks ago. We talk about the surrogacy, and India is a big hub for surrogacy in world. and we have a lot of big agency who is really working on a surrogacy. But if you might heard about the Sweden experiment about the artificial worm.
No.
No, you do not.
Oh, the artificial worm. Yes. The one where they actually simulated the whole single cell worm or two cell worm.
How you differentiate your digital surrogacy with that digital worm?
Well, that is actually, I think, a kind of like where we're getting at with artificial intelligence, and that probably is the future. But I don't know. I talk with a little reservation from there, not having the experience in how far artificial intelligence has gone. It's a big interest of mine, but I believe that this digital surrogate of ours, our digital surrogate, is just an intermediary. It's just an advanced form of telepresence made possible by augmented reality. Getting up to speed, the technology getting smaller, getting more variable, and we actually be interacting with digital versions of ourselves if need be. But of course, these digital surrogates can then, like I said, take over a mechanical body, which is, let's say, at your workplace. Instead of driving to work, you upload yourself into a robot machine that's out there, and you're actually doing the job. And if need be, when you cannot use a mechanical body, then you're back to your digital version of yourself, and you are viewable by another human who's wearing an augmented reality visor.
Okay, great. Sid, do you have any question from any one of you? No? Sid, you can continue.
Okay, so I was just saying how soon we can expect this to happen, Clyde. I mean, there are so many movies and so many work which we have seen, like we see a lot of Hollywood movies, a lot of books like you. But how soon can we expect this? Like within 10 years, 20 years?
No. Actually, the book that I wrote was actually really near. In fact, I call it low-level science because short of it being a white paper, it actually shows you how you can do it. And the website for the book, www.dialogate.com, actually has research work from other people and working examples of this. What we are waiting for probably is a kind of a slick AR visor or glasses to come about. And that's about it, because I just got my delivery of my Oculus Rift 2 days ago. And it's looking great. It immerses you, but it's virtual reality. And it's, of course, it's like wearing a scuba mask on your face, but hey, it's there. And I expect a great augmented reality visor to come in probably by another 2 years. The depth camera can do everything else for you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. It was really, I mean,
my pleasure.
Like, if you get time, you can like devote your entire time to this kind of subject. That is why we are doing India Future Society. So glad to have speakers like you in our conference.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay. So thank you very much, Clyde. Next speaker we have is Dr. Ilyas Stambler. Ilyas Stambler is on our advisory board as well. So I will just give a brief introduction of Ilyas Stambler. Ilyas Stambler is a researcher at Department of Science and Technology and Society of Bar Ilan University, Israel. He worked as a scientific writer at the Biophysical Shortstein Center for Research and Technology of the Salom Bar Ilan University. He studied biomedical engineering in Moscow Polytechnical Institute, biology at the Technion Israel Institute of Technology, and has an MA in English Literature from Bar Ilan University. Ilya received his PhD degree at the Department of Science and Technology and Society at Bar Ilan University. His thesis subject is, and his main interest is, the history of life extensionism in the 20th century. He is longevity activist and coordinator at the International Longevity Alliance. So lots of credit to his name already, and he has been part of the conference and the people he meets. It's like we are really glad to have him with India Future Society. So I think we can go ahead with Ilya's slide. We can go ahead. Ilya, you can go ahead with your slide. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Siddharth. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here, to be invited here, and the fact that these events are celebrated across the world is really a sign of the future. And it is usually very difficult to predict the future. It's difficult to make any predictions, especially about the future, somebody said. But one of the most likely events that will happen in the future is a considerable increase in life expectancy. As we can see, during the past 100 years, the life expectancy increased by about 50 years. So it's approximately half a year added to human life each year, and there is no ceiling and no end foreseeable for this development. And now I'll just go to my slides and show some of the ways that people thought in the past and are thinking now how we can increase our life expectancy, how we can increase our longevity, our healthy longevity.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now I'll share my screen. No, 1 second, please. Just taking some time. Okay. So, as you said, my main affiliation is International Longevity Alliance, which is an international group of people seeking to promote longevity research all across the world, that it will become both a national and international priority. And how can we actually increase our longevity? Isn't it predetermined from above? Actually, no. Aging is a very plastic process, and longevity can be increased as well as life shortened, but we hope that there'll be more life extension than life shortening. How can we do it? As was suggested over 100 years ago by the Nobel Prize winning physiologist Elie Mechnikov, we can extend our longevity simply by eliminating the harmful or excessive elements and replenishing or adding the deficient or necessary elements. And this is actually a concept very similar to the concept proposed in Indian traditional medicine thousands of years ago in Ayurveda, speaking of the doshas, the balance of the doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and you are supposed to remove the excessive element, the excessive dosha, and replenish the deficient dosha, and in this way achieve a balance. But of course, in modern science, the terms are different. Mechnikov spoke of the balance of different tissues. For example, by removing what he called devouring phagocytes, you remove the source of damage, and by replenishing what he called beneficial tissues, parenchymal tissues, like the tissues of the heart and nerve tissue, you are supposed to increase the functionality of the body and prolong its life. And a similar principle was proposed about the same time by the French biologist, the president of the French Biological Society, Charles-Édouard Brown-Séquard, who suggested that in order to combat aging, to increase life, you are supposed to replenish the hormones, the sex hormones that were diminishing in the aging body from without. That was the beginning of hormone replacement therapy. And the same idea continued for over 100 years, namely the replenish of deficiencies and the removal of damage, or the removal of excesses. Only now the things that are removed or added differ. There was an explosion of this technology in the 1960s, where various novel ways were found to remove things that we do not want, starting from antibiotics and ending with antioxidants, removing the various sources of damage, but also various other things to remove harmful elements such as chemotherapy to remove cancer cells, and advanced surgery to remove unwanted tissues. And at the same time, there were huge developments in the field of replacement, tissue replacement by both biological tissues and artificial bionic tissues and organs. and virtually all the tissues and organs you can think of were replaced from head to toes, and actually both heads and toes were replaced in this time, in the 1950s and 1960s. Head was transplanted.
Ilya,
Yes,
sorry
please.
for interruption. Can you
Yes.
maximize your slide and
Ilya, you are not moving. Okay, your slide was not moving earlier.
can you put?
I was still in the same slide. I was in the same slide still.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. Can you put your F5 so it make big?
Okay, 1 second. One second. Please shout if anything is wrong, so I'll know.
Sure, no problem, no problem. Just press F5.
Okay, first let me do this screen share.
Yeah,
This time.
it's bigger now. So sorry for interruption, all of you.
No, it's okay.
No, sorry for. Okay, finally. Okay, and now it's F5. Is it okay now?
Still, it's not. Please
Still
put
small?
in full screen. It's small still.
It shows to me full screen. I don't know why, but my screen is full.
You might have selected.
Ilya, you can just go to the slideshow and make it slide screen.
But you see, if I am on full screen, I cannot see the Google Hangout window. You understand?
Okay, you're fine. You can continue with that state. Okay, that's fine. We can read it clearly. You can go with that. Go on.
Okay. How about now? One second.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. You can go on.
Okay. So what I was saying is that in the 1950s, 50s, everything was replaced from head to toes, and the head was transplanted in a dog in the 1956 by the Russian Vladimir Demikhov, and in a monkey in 1963 by the American William Wright. And during this time, there really comes to the foreground the idea that actually any aging and any wearing out organ can be replaced by either artificial organs or biological organs, but still the same idea remains that we will be able to remove the unnecessary part and the parts that we need. And now the additions and removals come to the molecular level. Now we're able to either improve the expression or diminish the expression, do the knockout of certain genes that are associated with longevity or shortness of life, for example, by increasing the activities of sirtuins or other longevity-associated genes like FOXO and CLOTO and others. The lifespan of animals in certain experiments were extended, and on the other hand, by diminishing the activity of certain genes such as DAF or decay accelerator or insulin growth factors, the lifespan was also increased. But once again, the idea is to add and remove, to subtract and remove. Also, chemical balance is very important, and here too we must be able to remove and add matters as we see fit. For example, there have been developed various means of removing unnecessary chemicals, for example, by such means as chelation and antiresorbents and other means. On the other hand, the entire business of supplementation is designed to replenish the elements that our body is supposed to lack. But once again, the question of balance is crucial. If you add or remove a certain excessive dose, you will be doing more harm than good. And that's probably one of the causes of inefficiency of certain supplementation regimens, because we're not sure about the dose. Next, the addition and subtractions of matter really come to the molecular level. On the side of subtractions, we now have certain nanotechnological means, certain means of nanomedicine to remove unnecessary tissues and cells, for example, by means of gold nanoshells that are inserted into cancer cells and then irradiated, and by their heating they destroy the cancer cells. On the side of addition, we already have the first prototypes of artificial respirocytes, artificial oxygen-carrying cells. It's a very important development because lack of oxygen is a major, if not the major, cause of death, and we already have the first prototypes of that. There are also the first prototypes of nanorobots for immune surveillance. For example, the targeted delivery of drugs to specific receptors. Also, the program of strategies for engineering negligible senescence is largely based on additions and subtractions of matter. For example, the replenishment of tissues through stem cell therapy on the side of addition, or the removal of molecular garbage by, for example, by various enzymatic means on the side of subtractions or removal of unnecessary matter. Also, in regenerative medicine, it is important to be able to add and remove matters. For example, on the side of subtraction, we have various means to eliminate senescent cells. For example, once again, by immunological means, by T killer cells, for example. And on the side of addition, we have various cell therapies, and now even printing of various organs and tissues, or other means of tissue engineering, such as using scaffolds, where recently there was an announcement that the entire heart was built on a scaffold. But once again, the idea is to replenish or replace the deficient parts, and it is an engineering problem. There is nothing mystical about it, just an engineering problem. Is everything okay? Do you hear me well? Just I don't see anybody for my screen.
Yep, it's all okay. All okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next, there are also means of adding and removing artificial organs, the things that were beginning to be developed in the 1960s, but now the means are more advanced. On the side of subtraction, we have robotic surgery, which actually doesn't need human intervention, but can do an entire surgery by itself. And on the side of addition or adding deficiencies, we have various means, so-called enhancement means, starting from artificial hearts and robotic arms, and ending with exoskeletons and brain-computer interfaces, once again to add the deficient capabilities from without. And just to emphasize the matter, robotic arms did not exist about 10 years ago. The first modular arm was created in 2002, and in 10 years these arms are beginning to sense motion and to have some other sensory activities. So all this was done in about 10 years, and the progress is very rapid. But there are also means for life extension that are not so easy to quantify, not so easy to say what we add or remove, the so-called holistic means that are supposed to affect the entire body. And these means were known once again since the time of Ayurveda, such means as moderation, rest, meditation, exercise, natural and healthy moderate nutrition. Some more recent developed is electromagnetic therapy, but which is also, it is not clear what you add or remove, but it affects the entire body. And it is important to make this distinction between reductionist and holistic approaches, or rather work in complement with both reductionist and holistic approaches. So these are this very brief overview of some of the means that were proposed for life extension, for healthy life extension. And what is important to understand that all these means should work together. There is no magic bullet to treat the problem of aging or to extend life, all the means should work together. We should work on both on the outside to improve the living conditions of the elderly by certain environmental means, by means of gerontotechnology, but also should be able to work from the outside, from the inside, by the means I've just outlined, by regenerative medicine, by nanomedicine, by organ replacement, by various anti-aging pharmaceutical agents. A huge program of research is needed to be able to actually see what works best and how various means can be combined to provide optimal results, to provide optimal healthy life extension. And this is not just a governmental problem and not just a problem of certain university. This is a problem of the whole world, and everybody can contribute to this work, to this program of pursuing longevity. First of all, simply by doing research. Yes, please.
Is your slide is not moving, or you are still on same slide?
I just moved the slide to the last one.
Last one. We are not able to see the slide on last one. It's still on second slide. You are in full screen mode, or you are in a half screen mode?
Wait a second. Which slide do you see now?
We are seeing the third slide.
Oh, that's terrible. Okay, let me. Okay, so because I'm moving very fast and I'm seeing my last slide, but you know, probably some problem with my computer. Let me do the sharing again. Let me do the sharing again. So I'm on my last slide already.
Okay, fine.
And
you can go on.
Okay, so wow, I don't know. We're talking about future technologies, but the current one is not working properly, so that's our problem. Screen share. Okay. No, nothing still.
Yeah, you can go on. You can go on.
Okay, I'm on my last slide. Here you go. Do you see it? Oh, no, I'm on my first slide. Oh.
Yeah, you are on last slide. Fine, we can see.
Do you see the demonstration and the logos of the International Longevity Alliance? Yes? No? Okay, never mind then. What I was saying is that actually the pursuit of longevity is the problem of everyone, and everyone can contribute, mainly by doing more research, by getting more interested in the subjects. Science is not unrelated to society, and in most cases it fulfills a social demand. So when there is a demand, there is also an offer, and when people begin to demand life extension, the offer will likely to emerge quicker. So what people can do, what everyone can do, is to educate him or herself about the advances in longevity science, to study relevant fields such as biogerontology, various fields of biotechnology, regenerative medicine, to join other like-minded individuals. For example, I always advocate for International Longevity Alliance, but there are many other associations promoting healthy longevity. Try to get involved within working academic institution, even as a volunteer, lobby, promote legislation supportive of longevity research, practice a healthy life-prolonging lifestyle, because it will be a great pity if far-reaching life extension technology emerge about 2 months after we are not able to use them. So we should make an effort to extend our life by available means, and make sure that those technologies emerge as fast as possible. So that was what I wanted to say, and once again, thank you for inviting me, and it was a great pleasure to be here, and let's hope for a future of longevity. Thank you.
Yeah, longevity. Thank you for nice presentation, Ilya. Just the slide is not moving, but we are very able to understand what you are talking about, and except without the slide. Thank you for presentation.
Okay.
And anyone
Okay.
have any question? Anyone have
In
any
the future,
question?
the computers will work also. So we will not only get longevity, but also working
Actually,
computers.
I have one question.
Please.
Sanvaz has one question. Yeah, please.
My question is how you see longevity in India, especially with a religion perspective.
Okay. First of all, longevity is everywhere. It's increasing in India also, and actually quite rapidly. Compared to the Western world, it's actually rising more rapidly. If life expectancy was about 50 years, only 50 years ago, now it's about 70, if I'm not mistaken. So it's rising rapidly, and also the technological capabilities of India are being developed. And if I can use this opportunity, but still there is not sufficient interest in this subject in India, not sufficient research in the subject of India in India. If I can use this opportunity, in June 10-13, there will be a large conference, so-called the Global Conference on Aging in Hyderabad in India, and there will be only single symposium on the biology of aging and life extension there, and we hope to promote it wider and get more researchers involved, more researchers interested. But a great field of work lies ahead. We hope to increase interest in the subject in India also.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Clyde, Harish, Kus, Miriam, Sid,
Thank
Siddharth.
you, Ilya. It was a really good presentation, and we are looking forward to meet you in Hyderabad in June. In which June or July? June.
Yeah, it's a June.
June.
Actually, I
Okay.
just like to tell everyone here that there's a conference from the IFA, as Ilya is telling. It's in June, so everyone invited there because we are going to do some type of kind of event or a meeting there with India Future Society and the International Longevity Alliance and some other fellows from the research background and the lobbying background. So everyone invited there, and if it's possible, then you can join us there in June too. And so thanks for Ilya, thanks for nice presentation. Now we can move for next presenter. The next presenter is Mr. Harish Shah, who is from Singapore. Let me introduce Harish Shah, what he's doing and what is it about. Harish is Singapore's pioneering local-born commercial futurist and the sole proprietor of futurist management consulting practice known as the Status Serve Consultancy. Harish developed a passion for study, understanding, expecting, and embracing the future while he was undergraduate at the University of Western Australia in Perth. Siddhartha is also a student at that same place, pursuing a Bachelor of Commerce degree with triple major in Human Resource Management and Industrial Relations and the Management along with the Marketing electives. So Harish has a lot of background from marketing and the financial status. After graduating from UWA, the distinguished average in each of 3 subjects, Harish returned to the Singapore where his formal education stopped, but his passion to studies continue to grow. Besides being a futurist, Harish is a seasoned strategic negotiator and accustomed to complex negotiation. He is a powerful speaker, futurist, presenter with subtle sense of humor. Prior to internship, Harish has worked as a HR consultant to some of the world's top corporate and has sold industrial outsourcing service, managed learning and development, and also being involved in managing rehabilitative work with governmental organization of Singapore. So, Harish, you are welcome to present your topic of the talk today. That is on the future cannot be predicted, but it can be objectively studied. So, go on, Harish, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Avinash, for that very detailed introduction. I think I'm sorry, I should have sent you a shortened version. I think you got that pretty much off my online profile, which is everything. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. At any time when anyone is not able to hear me loud and clear, do feel free to interject. I'm going to put my presentation on full screen, so I probably won't be able to see any comments on the sidebar. Anyways, thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak this evening. It's going to be rather rudimentary for me.
Okay, great. Go on.
The future cannot, sorry, can you see my slides?
No, not yet. You need to be slides share first.
Yeah, give me a second.
Yeah, go on.
Oh. A second. Okay, found it. Can you see my slides now?
Yes, now.
Yes. Okay. Let me know if there's any problem. I can always change it.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyways, what I'll be talking today will be very rudimentary. The future cannot be predicted. It can be objectively studied. This is coming from the perspective of a self-trained commercial futurist. To begin with, this is my perspective that time is dynamic and that the future therefore is dynamic. You cannot tell what tomorrow will bring, and basically if you make any plan today, whether for a commercial purpose or for family reasons, likelihood is whether it's for an hour in the present day, for a coming day, coming week, coming fortnight, coming month, or a coming year, what you likely experience is that your plan will not go exactly as how you would picture in your mind, because there are infinite possibilities, life is dynamic, and so is time. We would like to imagine, we would like to think, we would like to idealize that 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years from today, we'd accomplish so much, we'd acquire so much, we'll be at a certain place that we picture ourselves in. But a freak solar flare that no one has anticipated, or a super volcano eruption, could end all human life tomorrow. That is the kind of dynamic situation we all are alive in. There are no guarantees in life, and there are no guarantees in time. A lot of people, when I introduce myself as a futurist to them, they ask me, do I read the tarot cards, or read palms, or look into crystal balls? And I tell them none of the above, because maybe it's my futurist perspective, or it's just me being a non-superstitious person, but I do not believe in prediction, because nothing that you predict, in my experience personally so far, has come true. Because the possibilities are always infinite, and plans can always be impacted by unknowns, and the future is always going to be a mystery until it arrives. You know what the history is based on what has already occurred and what is known with certainty, but we do not have the luxury with the future. This will bring the question to many minds as to why then are we attending a Future Day conference, why the India Future Society, why am I a futurist, why any of us here are in the future studies profession or talking about the future. Although we cannot predict it, we need to anticipate the future because it is important. If we do not, we cannot plan, we cannot set objectives, we cannot add meaning to our life. I'm not just talking about professional life, or commercial life, or political life, I mean life as a whole. You need to look forward to something in order to live towards it, to have meaning. That is a human necessity. And we need to plan for the future in order to get to a point of progress in terms of setting milestones, so that yes, we have a measurable timeline within which we set a target and expectation of ourselves to achieve certain things. So basically, for the same reasons, we need to have long-term projections and long-term forecasts. This in order to set goals, as in serious goals. We need to set standards for ourselves, that if we have accomplished this much today, over this period of time, over the same period of time ahead, or a fraction of it, or a multiplication of it? What should be the standard we expect ahead? By when should we achieve something? If we tell ourselves that we need to get to Mars, we need to set up a Mars base or a moon base, then we need to set a milestone as to when we are going to achieve it. Otherwise, we'll continue talking about it. We'll never get there. This is necessary for our progress, and this is necessary for our human survival. How we can study the future objectively then? It's not predictable, but we can anticipate it objectively by making educated scenarios. Firstly, the most common tool, most common purpose of future studies is planning scenarios, scenario planning exercise. This can be done based upon what is known, based upon certainties. There are certain things that we know will happen. If you heat water, once it reaches 100 degrees Celsius, it will boil, as an analogy. How do we know that these things are certain? Based upon the past. We look at our experience, we look at history, how things have occurred in history, how convergences have played out, how divergences have played out, how ill effects have come about in doing something, and how positive impacts have come about in doing something. The secret to the future, the wise of the past have always said, lies in the past. And we take that. We have to ask ourselves the question constantly, what has happened in the past? What happened in history? What led to World War II? What led to World War I? What could we have done then to avert it? How things could have been different? If Hitler had never risen to power in Germany, would World War II have been averted? These are questions that we can ask, that we can read into, we can analyze, we can study. And based on what we find in that, we can look ahead and we find answers as to how we can avert perhaps a World War III. How can we avert rogue leaders? Whatever's happening in Syria today, how can we avoid that happening in another country tomorrow? These things can be planned by looking at the past. We derive possibilities by looking at trends and patterns, because the universe is actually, although many will disagree with me on this, yes, there's a lot of chaos, I say it myself, possibilities in time are infinite. However, the universe is kind to us in the sense that everything has a structure, everything has an orderly pattern in terms of whatever is material. I cannot talk about the immaterial, but whatever is material has a structure, has a pattern. In terms of how we evolve, how society forms, how society grows, how we behave in time, is also bound in patterns and trends, or surfaces patterns and trends that can be identified and that can be studied. With these trends and patterns, we can create forward sequences. And with those forward sequences, we can create educated scenarios that are likely, not necessarily accurate, not necessarily predictive entirely of what things will be like, where when we arrive there, we already know everything that's going to happen, and we just act surprised. It does not work that way, but we can at least plan broad, generic scenarios in terms of what to expect based on what we already know from past patterns. Now that's looking at the past. Another way of planning the scenarios forward is also looking at the present. What is real now? For example, we have technology where, like Clyde talked about, we are going into AR. Google Glass is coming up. We are moving into wearable technology. We have moved from laptops to tablets, which are now gradually disrupting the laptops. That is happening in the present. Certain things have already been accomplished. And based on what is in development, we can picture, based on the impacts already seen with developments that have been completed, what is the next level impact we can see with what is in development today? What is likely to be disrupted? What is likely to be changed? How will our behaviors be influenced? How will our behaviors be changed? Based upon changes that are in progress, we can see likely impacts in the future based on the convergences. What happens when multiple developments converge? Because nothing in this world happens in a silo. At some point, different developments will intercross and they will change. In terms of merging into one and creating something new with synergy. And this can be both technological and it can be social in terms of society. Basically, what I'm talking about is people. Generation to generation and over time with different age stages, people change. As this change occurs, our society changes, communities change, and this impacts markets, this impacts commerce, this impacts politics, and it overall impacts our world. And based on that, if we can crack that, we can crack the scenarios for what will happen 10 years from today, 20 years from today. Again, we're not predicting, but just painting broad, generic scenarios. It is important that when we do these things, whether it's studying the past or studying the present, for the purpose of unlocking the future, planning for the future, we keep things evidence-based, have a scientific basis, because it is easy to fantasize about things, it is easy to have plans in our minds, it is easy to dream, but not all dreams are realized, not all fantasies are physically possible. And if we base our projections and our forecasts on fantasies and dreams, or on ideas that are at the top of our head but which we've not checked out in terms of weight, in terms of chemistry, biology, physics, is that possible? If we've not answered that question today, we cannot assume that it will be possible tomorrow. We need to have some form of a guarantee to have a valid indicator or factor or element in our projection for the future. Of course, a lot of futurists today will disagree with me on this. They will say that, okay, by that you're taking away all hope of having ideals, of all hope of utopia, all hope of fantasy, all hope of leveraging on fictional ideas becoming real. That is not the intention. The intention is, if you want to plan for something seriously, you want to make it worthwhile, you want to make it worth your time and your resources, you need to have a scientific basis. Anything unproven or without scientific basis is unlikely to provide a useful product, because product as in a future study or a projection or a scenario plan, because you don't know if it is real for sure. And if you don't know if it's real for sure today, there is a 50% chance at least that it will not be realized tomorrow, and all your efforts or all your planning based on that forecast will be wasted. We have to remember that the primary purpose of any future study is to be useful in planning of any kind, however you define it.
Harish?
Yes?
We are very near to the time foundation. So
I'm almost done.
okay, fine, go on.
Okay. So how we do this, once we have objective evidence-based research to paint a scenario ahead, we can create an ideal future state and backcast from there from a critical key or milestone point. For example, I'm very focused on visioning 2050, where I create a scenario of what year 2050 will look like and backcast from there. And based on realistic possibilities of today, we create that, and then we reverse engineer ideas, we reverse engineer innovative thinking, and we reverse engineer models for business. And that's how it becomes useful. The benefits of future studies is that we are prepared for change before it happens. We accelerate positive action, and we try to mitigate negative action, such as how do we prevent another Syria, for example, generically speaking, or environmental destruction. We enable proactive measures to create sustainable plans and strategies for our businesses, for societies, for communities, governments, and states, which can remain relevant over time without becoming redundant too quickly. The challenges we have is that human beings are not rational, objective, we are prone to bias, we are idealistic, selfish, we tend to be subjective, and therefore there is an indirect contradiction to the necessity in future studies of being objective. We are usually myopic, we are short-sighted, we don't want to listen to plans that are too far off. We are adversarial, we don't want to collaborate or cooperate on such important work. We are prone to denial that certain things will happen if it does not fit an ideal picture in our minds. And we'd rather prefer to predict and speculate, turn to crystal balls, rather than look at objective study. That's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions if there are.
Thank you, Harish, for nice prediction
Great
of the
presentation,
future
Harish.
presentation. So, anyone have any questions?
Harish, I just have one question.
Yep.
It is, like you are the only guy in Singapore who is involved in this kind of study and work. So, like, is there any other group you are planning to like join who are doing this kind of work, or like, do you think you can get support from other groups? Who like are there any other groups in Singapore who are doing this work?
Okay, basically, in terms of commercial future studies, I'm the only person who's doing this at this moment.
Okay.
The government in Singapore has started a future studies unit, at least the first one 10 years ago. Since then, they've created a number under different ministerial prerogatives. They
Okay.
have also been working with various foreign bodies, horizon scanning groups, for very political and regional security purposes.
Mm.
However, when it comes to commercial future studies, just talking about how do you plan for a product life cycle to prolong
Okay.
it as much as you can, or renew a product life cycle, or what are the products of the future, such as the brain-computer interface that I've been writing about a lot as of late. I don't know of any other futurist based in Singapore or born in Singapore that's doing that at the moment.
Okay, thank you. So that makes you unique in the sense.
Yeah, anyone else has a question?
I have one question
Yeah, go on.
related to Google Glass. In that case, it is said that scenario planning based upon the present. I'm talking about Google Glass.
Okay.
So, can you elaborate this example?
No, for example, we know for sure, we know for certain that Google Glass is possible. And that is what I mean. When I say, okay, let's study 2020 or let's study 2025, let's look at the future of brain-computer interface, for example, or let's look at the future of wearable technology. Before we start to speculate, we need to look at what we have today. For example, when you talk about Google Glass, we know that they have already developed a system where sound travels directly to the brain, bypassing the eardrum. Google has created this technology, and they're still fine-tuning the product to make it ahead of its market even further before they release it, so that there's no competition. Because the past trends has been, now I'm talking about the past, you talked about the future, but I cannot answer this question separately. I have to talk about both present and past. The past trend has been, the moment Apple released its iPad, within 3 months there were a multitude alternatives from various other major brands around the world. Now, I'm not willing to believe that all of them were working on the same thing at the same time. What I'm willing to believe is the moment you release something new on the market, someone quickly replicates that. And what Google is doing, its future study is this. It has looked to the past and found the secret. When you release something like that, people will replicate it by reverse engineering it or breaking it down, dissecting it. Therefore, what they're doing is perfecting their product, the next generation product, Google Glass, so far ahead that their competitors are going to have a lot tougher time. So that's what I meant. Basically, you must look at past and present trends in terms of deciphering what will happen ahead. So basically, when I look at brain-computer interface, I have to look at what University of Berkeley is doing today, what University of Massachusetts is doing today with their brain-computer labs, to be able to give an educated estimate or scenario of what we'll likely have by the year 2025.
So,
Okay,
that's a
thank you.
nice answer, Harish.
I'm sorry, Shanawaz, did I answer your question accurately?
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the answer, Harish. Anyone else?
Thank you, Harish. It was really good presentation. Any other questions?
Joima, you are seeking some question, answer for some question.
My question is already asked by Shanawaz. Actually, I posted it on YouTube, so he's
Okay,
also
fine. That's fine. Okay, I think we are running out of time, so we can move for the next speaker. Siddharth, can you go for the next?
Avinash, we are good till 6:30, right?
Yeah, we have a lecture by the Miriam from the 6:30, is it? Okay, we have enough time actually. Sorry, Harish.
Yeah, Harish, we have enough time. You can talk. You,
Actually,
Well, I can field more questions if anyone has any for me, because I'm done with my presentation.
Harish, I have a question regarding your work you are doing already. That the future studied, the title of your presentation is that it cannot be predicted, but it can be objectivable. So, if we say, if we a scientist, a person, there are two type of person, like one the scientist and one the policy maker. So, if a scientist think about some method, he can go for that method and just continue work toward that method to get it completed and get some output. When the case of policy maker, he work very differently. So, can you put some light on this? What I'm trying to say, that I like to know more about the intellectual property of a scientist or the policy maker. Sometimes people think that the scientist or the researcher do not have any intellectual property. What they are doing for the future is completely taken by the policy maker, and it can be used by some wrong purpose itself, maybe possibility. So can you
Okay, if you're asking the question from IP rights, I will not be able to answer that.
No, it's not a IP right.
But in terms of what's the angle again?
I'm just saying that the policy maker thought that they have all the intellectual right of the researcher and the scientist. Means scientist, whatever the scientist is doing, is not actual for their own. It's not actual, the application of that research is not for the researcher their own.
Right.
It's completely depend on the policy maker, how it's going to be used. Like the Einstein has found out the equal to mc square, but the government built up an atom bomb.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm just asking that, can you put some points also in support of it?
This is actually very much, I get a question now. That's the very reason why I have stayed away from governmental, political future studies thus far, and I've gone very much on the commercial route. Because, okay, let's face it, when you talk about a scientist or an engineer, they work for the future.
Yep.
Whatever they work on today is to produce something, initiate a change for tomorrow. And I'm sure while there are mad scientists in the world and there are mad engineers in the world, Nazis had no shortage of those. But when I say Nazis, I meant Hitler's Nazis. But what I would like to think is that most scientists and engineers in the world are good-willing, good-thinking. And their intentions when they innovate, not all engineers and scientists will innovate or create something new. Be mindful, some of them are just going to work 9 to 5 and doing what the boss tells them and go home for 40 years. But those who actually create something new, let's talk about Einstein and Newton. When they do something, they base it on experience and experiment. They base it on what is logical and what is proven. And what is then therefore useful, because you know that if you put A together with B, it will lead to C. That is how they think and work. Now the other party that you're talking about, they often, well, you're talking about a group of people whose job it is to look after the warm chairs or seats that they are sitting on very often before they can do any more. And for that, they'll do anything that is necessary to apply whatever they can get their hands on, because, well, they can. Why not? If I'm in a position of power or influence or access where I can get a hold of everything that Avinash and Siddharth are doing, and if I can manipulate that and apply that to my advantage or benefit, even if it is no direct personal benefit, but it creates a legacy for me or strengthens my position of power for me, why not? and I can only think of the future in terms of what I can imagine.
Right.
I don't have to create a policy based on what is proven, what is done. Anyways, I can't be working along those lines either, because time is always changing, and I may not necessarily be trained, depending on who I am and the background I'm from. I may not necessarily be trained or equipped to actually think in that direction. Wait, this is how this generation is changing. This is how this societal shift is happening. What is going to be the consequence of that? What I'm doing today, is that going to be relevant tomorrow? I may not be in the position to think of that. A scientist or an engineer in his work is likely to be able to think of that, not the other party you mentioned.
That's right. That's actually why I've asked this question. Is that I was in a conference in India itself, based on the transhumanism and the posthumanism concept. There are so many philosophers, but they are to engineer the researcher type of people. Those philosophers see engineers and the researcher as an alien just meeting with these people. So they have very different kind of view of the future, and the engineer and the researcher has a very different kind of view of the future.
If I may just comment on that very quickly, Avinash, I'm looking at Clyde's comments. In Singapore, there was, when I went into this full time as a professional, the first thing I did was I tried to look for other futurists, and the first thing I came across was a meetup group for Singapore futurists. I was like, wow, I'm not alone. There are others out there.
Okay.
And I went for it, and basically from the first half an hour, it's all about someone pushing a fringe political agenda, about alternative lifestyles. It's all about fantasy world, and there's a lot of psychotic, perverse ideas going on that I'm fine with it. Each to his own. Everyone has their own beliefs, and each has a lifestyle preference, and you can do pretty much what you want. And if you aspire to that kind of a future, so be it. And if it arrives, then so be it. There's nothing we can do to change time, or we should do to change time, rather. I'm sure we can influence time somewhat, but I mean, I'm averse to the idea of us trying to control time. Hitler tried to do that. I don't want to be a second one. But yes, like Clyde just commented, world takeover. So yes, basically, when I went to the Singapore Futurist meetup, that's what it was, and I was really, if this is what it's about, I'm not going to show my face around here again. I have not. Honestly, I have not. But, and it's dangerous, because they are already, if you talk to anyone in Singapore, like what I said earlier, you mentioned future studies, they think you're reading tarot cards. And you're doing astrology. And then these guys, about something that's as little known, they're painting a really bad image, because they're giving really wrong ideas, because their personal agendas they just want to impose. They don't want to hear you. They don't want to hear another voice. They want to impose that we want a world like this. So, and that is frightening, and it's just not happening in Singapore alone. It's happening in many places. Transhumanism is a very hijacked term. If you look at the core basic meaning or fundamental meaning of what transhumanism is, basically it's something to do with the pursuit of what Ilya has talked about, only in a very different manner, where you actually try to live on through technology or extend your life through technology. There are a lot of people who take on very unique perspectives. I mean, they're welcome to that. But problem is they're hijacking it, and what that does then is it diminishes the value of future studies where it matters, and therefore we are very often, future studies began in 1945 as a consequence of World War II, where the US government said, we don't want another one of these, so let's start something like this. So it was a field founded by the US government through two commercial bodies backed by the US government in the US in 1945. And look at where we have gotten till 2014, not very far.
Yeah.
And that things like these are happening does not help very much. So thank you, Clyde, for pointing that out.
Okay.
Yeah. I just had something to say about this. It's like I'm here on this conference today because there are a few presentations that I want to hear about. In fact, Dr. Ilya was one. Dr. James is actually going to talk about later about real consequences of the future, job displacement, that kind of thing. Your presentation was good, and I don't know what Miriam's going to speak, but I'm sure it's going to be good. When we talk about transhumanism, it should address real-world problems, real-world solutions, and not be fooling around with philosophy that is open to interpretation, and especially not radicalism. Today, everyone's got access to the internet. You, me, we all know it. So if and the only people that don't are the masses, the uneducated masses. And if you're going to shock them with statements based on transhumanism, you're going to create a kind of an Armageddon that was never going to be there in the first place. You as a transhumanist are going to create that kind of situation rather than actually avoid it. And I believe that technology should be applied gradually, bring in, talk about the problems, and and then from there, and slowly we will transcend into a transhumanist kind of future. That's what I think.
Thank you.
Well, that was
okay, so next speaker is, shall I introduce the next speaker?
Clyde, and Clyde.
Sure, go ahead.
Something.
Unless what I spoke was too deep that you all want to reflect on it for the next 10 minutes. No, go ahead.
Okay, so the next speaker.
Yeah, please go on.
Okay. So next speaker we have Miriam Jisun from Germany. Her title of the talk is "We are responsible for our future." She will be talking for like next 30 minutes. Okay. So Dr. Miriam J.S. Liss is a strategic foresight researcher from Germany specializing in the interrelation of emerging technologies, society, politics, and future studies. She has been involved in many foresight projects for business, policymakers, and the European Commission, especially focusing on topics related to education, health, innovation policy, and emerging technologies. She had worked for nearly 1 year for an Indian company in Mumbai. Okay, so this was a brief introduction of Miriam Jisun, Dr. Miriam. I mean, she is very very good fit for this conference, and we are glad to have her with us. So hope you'll like her presentation today. Okay, so Miriam, I think Dr. Miriam, you can go ahead with the presentation.
Okay, hello,
Miriam,
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, yes.
Clear.
Yes, hello. I don't have any slides prepared for today, so I'm just giving a kind of presentation or speech without slides. So we are responsible for our future. So we can change more today than we were ever able to do before. Today we can not only change our surrounding to an ever increasing degree, but can also change aspects of human nature, aspects of our physiology, capabilities, and even lifespans. In the past, we had desires we were not able to fulfill because of our lack of scientific knowledge and technology. But today we are in the paradox situation that we have growing scientific and technological possibilities at our hands, but are growingly hesitant about using them. Thus, in the future, a dominating question will not be, can we do it, but do we want to do it, or even who wants to do it? As our scientific and technological development is accelerating at an unprecedented pace, to a great extent driven by the fast developments in computer and communication technologies, our surrounding is also changing at a faster pace and is getting increasingly complex. Nonetheless, society, legislation, and worldviews are often lagging behind the scientific and technological progress. This causes friction and turbulences as the force of change is penetrating resisting static arrays. Since societal, legal, and cultural aspects are inventions that are not primarily bound to natural laws, you can break the law, but not natural law, they are much harder to predict than technological developments that are based on natural laws. However, social, legal, cultural, and ethical dimensions are getting increasingly important for the future of our future. But in contrast to natural laws, positive law, that is, man-made law, can be changed. The next level of conflict may be beyond the measurable, or even beyond the discussion about the common good like access to clean air and water, food and resources. It may be about how far to merge with technology and how long one should be allowed to live. We already have the means to achieve really revolutionary things in health, longevity, energy systems, space exploration, and artificial intelligence, just to name a few. But citizens, decision makers, and governments need to support such ideas, consider them legal, and invest in them. In order to back them, they have to be understood. Research and development needs to be made transparent, and citizens need to be sufficiently educated. People need to be educated how to deal with accelerating technological possibilities and information explosion. They need to be educated to create an accelerating culture. We need cultural acceleration. Maybe we could start by accepting cultural relativism, as it is easier to accept changes to something relative than to something static. However, this raises the challenge: to what extent to accept moral and ethical relativism? Should there be things that we never ever should try to attempt? Every endeavor bears risks, and no technology is likely to be risk-free. However, we also have to consider the risk of doing nothing. By doing nothing and not progressing with science, research and development, we may risk the lives of humans who might have been saved if we had better medicine, advanced treatments, better protection, or agricultural technologies. By doing nothing, we risk the continuation of suffering, although we could have provided better nutrition, clean water, and better prosthetics. By doing nothing, we may risk war over resources. We always have to ask what is at stake, especially at stake if we are not making use of our growing scientific and technological possibilities. We need a symmetric view in technology assessment that also takes into account the potentially negative effects of doing nothing, going backwards, or remaining ignorant about new opportunities. On the other hand, we should not become overly enthusiastic about all the new possibilities, as this leads to an underestimation of risks. We do not want to lose our foresight because of immediate gains and shortcuts. We, especially we as futurists, also need to take greater responsibility for our decisions and actions, as due to growing possibilities, paths and consequences will become increasingly complex and will have an increasingly greater impact. With greater power comes greater responsibility, and with great power comes the temptation of abuse. Those who have knowledge are also thought to take the responsibility over how this knowledge is shared and applied. However, this is not always easy, as the same technology may be used to save or destroy lives. This leads to the question, what kind of ethics guidelines do we need for society to navigate through the future? In a world with greater freedom and individuality, which is a good and necessary development, reason and responsibility need to be even more emphasized. Unfortunately, still, more than 1 in 5 people worldwide are living in extreme poverty and may have never heard anything of advanced science and technology, not to say having the opportunity to use it. So it should also be the responsibility of knowledgeable and affluent to bridge this gap and ensure equal access to progress, which even helps to improve the overall acceptance of research and development. The trend looks promising, especially thanks to inventions like 3D printing, open source, and affordable gadgets produced, for example, by do-it-yourself or maker communities. So this may be called equal access by design. In face of growing possibilities, we also need to rethink current perceptions about topics like life, death, identity, personhood, and reliability. Could the hindering of research or extending healthy lifespans, for example, be considered a denial of life-saving assistance? What should be the legal status of intelligent robots and cyborgs? Which criteria, how much human, will be necessary to define the applicability of human rights? Human morphology, or even genetics and consciousness, whatever it really means, may not be sufficient criteria. How should identity be defined in an era of morphological freedom? Should autonomous robots be held accountable for their actions, especially if they someday will be entities with learning capability, running on self-correcting and self-improving software? The future will require different legal systems, and they need to adapt fast. From a socio-cultural perspective, there may also be much at stake due to advances in science and technology. Conventional perceptions about being human, about human biology, physiology, lifespan, limitations, and fate, and the divine may be overturned. As people should have the right to choose for themselves which changes to adapt and which not. In a free society, everybody should be free to choose as long as the choice does not deprive others of their freedom. This also means that people should be free to choose for themselves what to become, how to change, and which personal technologies to use. To make informed decisions, we need to free ourselves from external dogmas. This means also to bring culture and spirituality to a new level, to allow for critical thinking and the questioning of common beliefs. We need to understand that much of our cultures and religions have evolved during times where scientific reasoning was rather underdeveloped. To provide order and explanations for unfathomable events, the world was considered to be governed by supernatural entities that provided order, explanation, and comfort. They had the right in the past, but are already fading in the present, and may become obsolete in their original function in the future. Thus, culture and spirituality are functions of time, scientific knowledge, and socio-technological development, and need to adapt too. We need to develop new cultural and value systems that are coherent with our present and future environment, knowledge, and capabilities. We need new, non-linear directions in education that are taking into account accelerating change. The world, when they enter school, may be totally different and overhauled when they leave school. Maybe the whole concept of conventional schooling is obsolete in the context of transdisciplinary relations, increasing complexity, and accelerating scientific and technological development. As I said in the beginning, throughout most of human history, humankind was restricted by its lack of scientific understanding and technological capabilities. Nowadays, it looks rather that humankind is limiting itself culturally of fully benefiting from the scientific and technological advances it has achieved and will be able to achieve. Thus, the future is not only about science and technology, but to a significant degree about society, positive law, and culture. Many people are still rather just asking, how will the future be? And some are even fearful about the future. But the future is not fixed. It is an undiscovered country, waiting to be cultivated by us. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. A nice lecture. I think more on philosophical view. We are talking about just with Harish, and really interesting. So, thank you for lecture. Anyone have any question from Miriam? Anyone? Siddharth, Kush, Clyde, Harish, Ilya.
So Miriam, I just have one question.
Yes.
So I mean, are you like full-time devoted on this subject in Germany, or I mean, like you're working with, or is it just some hobby for you which you are involved in at the moment?
So actually, I'm working for a German research organization. So
Okay.
most of the job is just doing some research for our president.
Okay.
But I'm also doing something like foresight research on the basis of, scenarios, and working together with another institute that is doing rather technology assessment from a natural scientific view.
Okay.
So I'm partially involved in things like that, but rather assessment in regard to can you do it technologically or not, and on the other hand, what are legal implications.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
also much doing about the legal stuff, like how are the regulations and so on.
Okay. Thank you very much. I mean, yeah, it's really good to have you with us.
So I also have a presentation actually about methodology, but there were some classified stuff, so it would have taken quite some time to delete
I
all
mean,
the
you can show
classified
it
stuff.
quickly if you want.
And
You
no,
can
it's the
show it,
classified.
show them.
Okay.
So it's rather
It's a clever-
rather about scenario planning and things like that.
Okay. Yeah. Again, thank you very much, Miriam, for the talk. Okay, so we have next speaker. We have
Okay.
Kush
Anyone
Kumar. Okay,
have any
Kush.
questions
Yeah.
or,
Any questions?
I think we can move forward. Thank you for Miriam. Thank you for lecture. Next
Yeah,
one
you're
is,
welcome. So I can also share
is a
the
good-
text
yeah.
if you like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that will
please,
be.
please.
Miriam, you were in Kolkata?
No, I was in Mumbai.
Okay.
Mumbai.
Yeah. I also got a job in Kolkata. So I was from October to December, 2 months I was in Kolkata, but then I came back to this Bangalore city. Okay. So how many days you are in India now then?
So I was nearly 1 year in India, yes.
Okay.
Nearly 1 year.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good place.
Yeah, it was nice. And
Yeah.
maybe some of my friends are watching on Google, so on YouTube, so I invited them. Some of
Okay.
my former colleagues.
Okay,
Okay, cool.
that's great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we have
Welcome.
Siddhartha, let's
Kush
move.
Kumar.
Yeah,
Avinash, can I introduce?
have a
Can you
question?
introduce this speaker?
Yeah, please,
Then
please.
you can introduce the next
Yeah,
one.
please. Yeah, go on.
Okay. Thank you. From
So I'd like to introduce first him, and then we can move for his slides and presentation. Uh, Dr. Hooks has an executive director from of the Institute of Ethics and Emerging Technologies, a very famous and one of the first site based and promote the transhumanism and the longevity context. He's a bioethicist and socialist at Trinity College of Connecticut, where he teaches healthy policy and serves as a director of institutional research and planning. He holds a doctorate degree in sociology from University of Chicago, where he taught bioethics at the McLean Center of Clinical Medical Ethics. He is the author of Citizen Cyborg and also working on a second book titled Cyborg Buddha. Since 1999, he has produced several radio programs at Chance Sulfur Radio. He is also the fellow of World Academy of Art and Sciences and a member of Humanity Plus, the Neuroethics Society, the American Society of Bioethics, and a working group on the ethics and technology at Yale University. He speaks on medical ethics, health care policy, and future studies worldwide. So we are very heartily welcome Mr. Hughes on this conference organized by India Future Society. Please present your work, and you are on.
Great. Thanks so much. I just wanted to say that this work that we're doing now on technological unemployment has been a new and very welcome shift for us from some of the more transhumanist topics that we've addressed in the past. We just spent last year working on the topic of non-human personhood rights and did a conference at Yale on that. We're focusing this year on this topic of technology unemployment and the basic income guarantee. And one of the reasons that we're focusing on that is that we think that too many futurists and certainly people in the transhumanist community jump to, well, they either assume that technology will always create jobs in the future, or they jump to a future utopia in which radical abundance will give free stuff to everybody, and we don't have to worry about unemployment because everyone will have superabundance. So I want to work through the scenario here a little bit and talk about what the policy options need to be. The term technological unemployment was coined by John Maynard Keynes. In this quote, he talked about a future in which technology destroyed more jobs than it created. And of course, this expectation of technological unemployment goes back at least 200 years. We find writers in the Enlightenment, the French and British Enlightenment, beginning to speculate about a future in which people were freed from labor. Condorcet, famously in his works on progress, speculated that eventually human beings would not have to work. Of course, the assumption was that we would have universal abundance in many of those utopian thinkers. So in the 20th century, when we had the Great Depression, Keynes began to think, and others began to think more seriously about the fact that we might end up without universal abundance. Let's see. So one of the things that many of these slides, of course, are going to reflect statistics about the American labor situation. This one reflects the decline of agricultural labor on the part of men over the course of the last 150 years, and the corresponding increase in some other occupations, some white-collar occupations. But the greatest change in the American labor situation has been the entrance of women into paid labor. Of course, women have always worked in one way or another, but they entered after World War II very strongly into the paid labor market. And as a consequence, we saw from World War II to the present an increase in the proportion of the population that was in paid labor. That began to decline in 2000, as I'll show in a second. But I wanted to address this. One of the reasons why people have assumed, economists in particular, have assumed and have as a very strong dogma the notion that technology will always create employment. And these were outlined by some Italian economists about 10 years ago, these kind of points of dogma. So the first is the dogma that new machines will always create new occupations that human beings will be able to fill. So that's the compensation via new machines and products. Compensation via decrease in prices is the notion that innovation reduces the cost of inputs and goods, stimulates greater demand, and creates more employment. In order to human beings will have to make the things that are have this increase in demand. So as, for instance, computers get cheaper, there should be more people making computers as more and more people buy them. Compensation via new investments, that's the notion that the profits created by greater productivity will go to the owning class, and they will invest these profits to create more employment. Compensation versus a decrease in wages. So these are the two policy parts of this, of the dogma. One is if you're a libertarian, you argue that there's a little bit of wind someplace. Is that me? Somebody should be muted. Okay, so compensation via decrease in wages is the libertarian projection that if actually unemployment begins to fall short, all we need to do is eliminate minimum wages, eliminate worker protections, and eventually the employment will pick up because people will be able to find jobs, although poorly paying jobs. Compensation via increase in wages is the Keynesian projection that all we need to do to create more employment is to redistribute the wealth that's being created by productivity and give people jobs. So these are the kind of components of why economists have this dogma that employment will always be created by technology. So one of the first things to observe here is that in the industrialized world, there's been a steady decline in the proportion of work lives that a worker spends in work. Now, as I said, women have always worked in one way or another. You could say that a woman's work was probably never done, but once they entered into the paid labor force, they began to participate in this same dynamic that there was a decline in the work week, a decline in the number of hours spent, of course, across the work life in paid labor. And this decline has continued up to the present and continues through the present, throughout the OECD, throughout the industrialized world. But also the proportion of the population that is in paid labor in the industrialized world has begun to decline over the last 10 years. In most of the OECD, it saw a sharp decline in 2008 to the present. Sharp is a small percent overall, but as you see here with the proportion in the United States, we reached a peak of the population in paid employment around 2000, and it's been declining since then. Now, there are several reasons for this decline. One is the baby boom reaching a retirement age, and so some of them are beginning to retire, which will be the second part of my observation. But part of it is also the jobless recovery that we've been experiencing, and that is partly having to do with this steady increase in productivity. Now, another dynamic with the steady increase in productivity over the last 200 years, but especially the last 50 years, has been that in the United States, the compensation rate has been flat since about the 1970s, the inflation-adjusted compensation rate. So there's been steady productivity increases, but the profits that have been produced have not been reinvested in creating more jobs, at least in the last 10 years. And they're certainly not being reinvested in increasing the abundance of the average worker. This is another way of looking at that same dynamic, which is the proportion of the total economy in the United States that goes to corporate profits versus to employee compensation. And you can see that over the last 40 years, the proportion going to employment compensation has been declining, and the proportion of wealth going to corporate profits, and of course to the top 1% of income earners, has been increasing. Now, to turn to the automation part of this, I don't think I have to give a hard sell to this audience for the argument that I don't think I have to give a hard sell to this audience that different kinds of technologies can have the potential to displace human labor. My argument is that all jobs are potentially automatable and done cheaper and better by machines than by human workers. But I think there are some aspects of this that might be illuminating. One is this recent paper from Oxford, The Future of Employment, How Susceptible Are Jobs to Computerization? A very interesting analysis that looked at the components of different kinds of jobs and the ways that the kinds of skills the jobs required, and then classified several hundred jobs throughout industrialized economies about how automatable they would be. And you see here their projection that recreational therapists, so people who work with people around physical therapy or recreational therapy, that kind of a job would not be terribly automatable. Their assumption is that dentistry couldn't be automatable. But at the other end, things like technical writing, retail sales assistants, accountants, and telemarketers, they think will be highly automatable within the next 20 years. And their projection in this paper is that 50% of all jobs in the United States are subject to automation within the next 20 years. Now, there's another dynamic, and it's not just automation and artificial intelligence and robotics, but it's also the disintermediation that's created by the internet. So basically, the connection between the supplier and the buyer of any particular service or good, when the internet or automation makes that unnecessary, then all the jobs in between become subject to being redundant. And we see this, for instance, with Netflix having destroyed the market for video stores. We used to have, a thriving business of renting videos, and that doesn't exist anymore. Amazon is having that kind of an impact on bookstores. Expedia and other kinds of travel agents have had that effect on on travel agents. So disintermediation is also part of the story of technological unemployment. Now, some of the economists who agree that there is technological unemployment, their argument is that the impact has not been overall the destruction of jobs. They're still optimistic that there will be creation of certain kinds of jobs in the future, but they do acknowledge that the kinds of jobs that have been destroyed have tended to be middle-class jobs. And so jobs at the lower wage part of the spectrum that have been preserved are things that, that require physical dexterity that robots can't do, or require certain kinds of service labor that robots can't do, but they pay the minimum wage in the United States. Versus at the other end of the spectrum, very high cognitive demand jobs that pay very well. So this has created a bimodal effect on employment and income so that it's destroying the middle class, but creating more of a two-tiered society in the United States. And of course, as I mentioned before, most of the wealth that's been created by our economy over the last 20 years has been going to the top 1%, and that accumulation of wealth at the top of our society has been increasing in its accelerating in an increasing rate over the last decade. Now, some people have argued, and Frey and his colleague argue at Oxford, that there are certain kinds of occupations that are immune to this kind of automation, and those are the occupations that require human creativity or certain kinds of unautomatable skills. And they point to things like healthcare and education. But there are many trends in healthcare and education that would argue contrary to their projection that there are certain kinds of jobs that are safe. We already see telepresence and robotic assistance happening in the healthcare sector. We see telemedicine potentially displacing the need for certain kinds of physicians. We see the de-skilling of labor because nurses can now do many of the things that physicians used to be required to do with the right kind of assistance. We see clinical decision support systems. So physicians are subject to all the foibles of human reasoning, and their capacity to make clinical decisions and diagnostic decisions is subject to their education and background. But once you automate the process of clinical decision making, you can have the wisdom of thousands of physicians in real time updating the clinical protocols and do a better job of doing medicine essentially than physicians themselves. And so the need for a physician becomes redundant, and you can have a nurse instead. We see the need for hospitals declining because of the growth of wearable patient monitoring systems and home medical systems that can take urinalysis and blood analysis and detect when someone has a fall and monitor their compliance with taking drugs. We see the same dynamic, of course, in higher education in general, with distance and online learning, although the evidence so far for the efficacy of online and distance learning is still pretty weak. But I think that as we improve the bandwidth and the modalities, that we will, in the next decade or two, have some pretty effective online distance learning methods of doing pedagogy. And this has the potential to eliminate large swaths of teachers, including college professors. Now, another part of the technological unemployment spectrum that people have not yet quite grokked or addressed is the impacts potentially of 3D printing and desktop manufacturing. If we get to the point where there are, and by the way, China is recently investing in the creation of a 3D printing facility that will print entire automobiles. So we're at the point already where there's a technology to have a design in CAD/CAM, ship it across the world to a 3D printer, and print something as large as an automobile. But most of the experimentation so far is in materials like plastic and with desktop manufacturing and things like that. So it's not quite threatening anybody's industries yet. But if we get to the point where we have a local store that has a 3D printer that can print large consumer objects, then a lot of the jobs between design and sale will be threatened. The manufacturing jobs, the transportation jobs, and the kind of retail jobs that would otherwise have been there. Another thing that, of course, many of the economists don't take into account is the impact of technological acceleration. Again, with you guys, I don't think I have to make the case, but they often make linear assumptions about the impacts of technology when nonlinear assumptions are more appropriate. The impacts, for instance, of artificial intelligence and of automation may be quite nonlinear within the next 10, 20 years. I just give a couple more examples here. some of the jobs that people think are immune. Robot prostitution is probably going to be attractive, at least for some. And so one of the oldest professions may be subject to automation. There's been evidence for 50 years in the United States since the creation of the ELIZA program that artificial intelligence may do a better job of counseling people than actual human psychologists would. And here I give an example of an online computerized confessional. So maybe even priests will be subject to automation. In the United States, college graduates had long been assumed one of the ways to avoid unemployment was to become a college graduate, but college graduates in the last couple of years since the economic crisis have also been subject to some of these trends of technological displacement. We've seen a sharp increase in part-time work, so trying to assess whether we're actually being subject to technological unemployment, part of it is the total number of work hours that the population on average has to work, the proportion of the population that's in paid labor, but also the increasing precariousness of the paid labor that people are in. There's been an increase in part-time work, sharp increase in the last 5-6 years in the United States, and an increase in the number of jobs that people will hold over the course of their lifetime as their work becomes increasingly fractured. Now, the other piece of the equation, and I don't want to go over my time too much here, but the other piece of the equation is that we're going to be living longer, and this in the industrialized world. Now, India doesn't have to worry about this quite so much because it's a very young population, and so you won't be experiencing the effect of old age dependency ratio until your current population reaches, 65, 70 or whatever, which is a ways off. But China will get there a lot quicker because of the one-child policy, and throughout the industrialized world, especially in places like Italy, which has very low birth rate, where they're going to be experiencing very sharp old age dependency ratio problem within the next decade or two. Now, there's been an increase in the United States of older people trying to stay in the workforce, especially white-collar workers, service employee workers. People who have been in physical labor, it's much harder for them to stay in the workforce in their senior years. But there's been an increase in older people trying to not retire and to stay in the workforce. Recently, Gallup surveyed Americans, what age did you retire, and that age has been increasing. This is the old age dependency ratio throughout the world, and as I said, India and of course Africa will have less of this problem within the next, this is projected for 2030, what the rates of old age dependency ratio are going to be. Western Europe having the most acute problem. We have a relatively less problem in the United States because we have a lot of immigration of relatively young people from places like Mexico, and also a relatively high birth rate compared to Western Europe. But we will also experience this problem acutely. Let's see, I'm going to skip. Okay, so the longevity dividend, this has been something that we've been working on at the IET for a long time, the notion that, that it's not necessarily bad to have an older population if we can come up with technologies that will keep people healthier longer and allow them to not become a burden on the public welfare system through their need for nursing care and expensive medical care. Now, the flip side of that is trying to get them back into the labor market. As I said, many older workers in the United States are trying to stay in the labor market, but if there's technological unemployment and an increasing healthy old population that is trying to stay in the labor market because of this problem of old age dependency, then we're going to have a convergence of these two problems. That there's the labor market, the potential jobs that people could get will be shrinking, and the number of people wanting to get those jobs will be growing. So what are some of the policy responses that will be projected, have already been discussed by people? Well, there's not very many that we have to go through, but it's basically we could protect jobs from technology, we could redistribute the jobs that continue to exist, we could create new jobs through public funding, we could enhance human workers to stay ahead of the robots. We could hope for magic nanoboxes to make free stuff for everybody, or we can figure out a way to pay everybody even though they don't have a job. Those are the basic options, and I'm just going to go through them very quickly. Protecting unemployment, there's a great example in the United States. New Jersey has a ban on self-serve gasoline so that they protected the jobs of people who pump gasoline. And it makes it unattractive for me when I drive through New Jersey to actually get my gasoline filled, because it takes about twice as long to have to use a human service worker than to just jump out of my car and fill my own tank. The costs of those kinds of Luddite bans eventually accumulate and become greater than the benefits. And so I think in the long run, the political attractiveness of these kinds of bans, even if there's a widespread acknowledgement of technological unemployment, there's going to be very little political pull for policies that say we should all be a little bit poorer and have a little bit poor quality service from the services and the industries that we're part of, so that human beings can stay in paid labor. I don't think that's going to be a very popular policy. Examples from history include the Ming Dynasty having destroyed their own sea power by closing themselves off to the world, and the Tokugawa isolation period in Japan. And eventually, another problem that addresses countries that decide to pursue a Luddite policies is that the rest of the world does not pursue those Luddite policies, and you become quite vulnerable geopolitically. You have reduced international competitiveness. So any country that decides, well, we're just going to pursue Luddite policies to protect employment will become quite vulnerable on the world stage. It's possible, however, to have, this is an example of the current robot density within Europe and the industrialized world. And Japan and Germany have high robot densities, and they have become, they're still relatively egalitarian countries. And so these have been to the benefit. Of course, Europe now has a lot of employment difficulties, which may be, again, partly to the result of technological employment. Now, redistributing employment with job sharing, of course, is one of the things that will be pursued, and I think it will be a popular policy. Americans work too many hours already compared to Europeans who have much more vacation time, and so I think throughout the industrialized world, there's going to be a call for shorter work life, a shorter work week, more vacations, and so forth. And a call to lower the mandatory retirement ages to get more older people out of the labor force so that there will be more jobs for younger people. Of course, that will, as I said, come into conflict with the increasing longevity of older people. There will be demands for creating employment, but the public sectors in the industrialized world have been flat or shrinking in the period of the last 6 years because of the austerity measures that have been pursued, as opposed to previous periods of recession which saw Keynesian investments to increase employment in the public sectors. And so we've seen a decline in the size of the public sector throughout the OECD, throughout the industrialized world, in the last 6-7 years. And we've also seen the U.S. military has just announced that it wants to return military size, the size of our armies, to pre-World War II levels, partly because of the increased investment in robotic drones and other kinds of high technology, which we hope to maintain U.S. military superiority with, even with fewer soldiers. And this is true in Europe as well. European armies have also been shrinking. Of course, China has not been shrinking their army, they've been increasing their army. So there are some countries around the world that have not been shrinking their armies. But these two kinds of public sector employment, post offices in the United States, the size of postal labor force has been shrinking. All kinds of public sector employment, from postal workers to the military, are probably not going to be able to absorb technological unemployment. Now, we could enhance human workers to try to stay ahead of the robots, and I won't give you the hard sell that I think that is a good idea to enhance human workers, and it may help a little bit, but that in the long run, we probably cannot stay one step ahead of robotics and artificial intelligence. And I guess I've already given you my, indicated my opinion about these post-scarcity proposals. I hope that there's post-scarcity. I hope that there are magic nano boxes. I hope that there's widespread stock ownership and a post-singularity stock market so that everybody benefits from, billion-dollar DAOs. But I just don't think that these kind of scenarios are terribly realistic. As one of the previous speakers said, we should probably stay a little bit closer to reality in our futurism. And they also require a political strategy. Okay, say we want to have everybody benefit from a post-singularity stock market and stock ownership. How do we get those stocks in everybody's hands? People don't have universal stock ownership right now. So I think it's a good idea, but we need to have a political strategy. Part of that political strategy has always been, since 200 years ago, when Condorcet and others began thinking about these things, they said, well, if we get to a point where we don't have to work anymore, we can create a society in which we all have a share in that society, where we all own the land at first. People who proposed universal redistribution of land ownership throughout the Enlightenment period, and more recently have been talking about a basic income guarantee, providing every citizen with a income from the redistribution of wealth in society. This would have the effect of divorcing income from work, expanding all of our social wages, free health care, and it would have the effect of replacing unemployment insurance, replacing old age security insurance, replacing disability insurance, and just giving everyone an income. And this proposal became very popular in the United States in the 1960s. We almost had the adoption of a negative income tax in the 1960s. And this was popular both by conservatives and liberals, people on the left, because the conservatives see this as a way, again, to shrink the state. So when we talk about the technological unemployment happening in the state, one of the ways to shrink the state is to get rid of all the welfare bureaucracy and just say, we're just going to send checks to everybody. With a negative income tax, there would be an inflection point of income. Everyone below that would get an increasingly large check. Everyone above that would have a progressive income tax. That would be one of the proposals for how to do this. Now, my final slide is just that I've recently written a paper and we'll be publishing a set of 9 papers on technological unemployment and the basic income guarantee in the Journal of Evolution and Technology. That will happen by Monday. And my paper talks about the need to think more seriously about the fiscal constraints that states are going to be under in this scenario. If there's declining employment, declining proportion of the population in paid employment, and an increasing accumulation of wealth at the corporate and the top 1% of the population, then there has to be some reappropriation of wealth. We can start with public sector ownership of things like resources. And one of the examples of a citizen's dividend in the United States is that Alaska, every Alaskan citizen owns a share, basically, in the oil that Alaska pumps to the United States. And so they get a check, about $5,000 a year. Every Alaskan citizen gets a check that's their share of the dividends off of those oil proceeds. Of course, around the world, public ownership of oil has not worked out terribly well. Most of that wealth gets pumped to Swiss banks instead of to people's pockets. But to the extent that we can have public ownership of these kinds of resources in the future, that may be one of the sources for paying these citizens' dividends. But eventually, we also have to have public ownership of the major sources of wealth, which are going to be some of the industries that are going to be highly roboticized. So that's a different argument for a different day about how what kind of a strategy, political strategy, allows us to eventually accumulate that wealth in public hands. But if you want to talk to me more about these things, you can always email me at director@iet.org. The slides, I think we sent the link, but I can send you the link as well. The slides are at iet.org archive. And thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope I didn't go over my time too much. I can't see my clock.
Thank you, Dr. James. Your lecture is really nice, and so anyone want to ask anything?
I have a question. Can I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on.
Thank you, James. Those are interesting. Some of the trends that you described may indeed lead to the end of jobs, to the end to massive unemployment, but that would be an industrial unemployment. Do you foresee some kind of return to natural economy? People growing, maybe designing their own food, making or designing their own clothes, and so forth.
That's fascinating. Andre Gortz is one of the people who I mentioned in the talk and who was very influential in my own thinking about this. He was a French labor theorist, and one of his proposals was that to make the transition from the current industrial society to the post-industrial, post-work society, that there should be public investment in creating workshops where people can relearn the kind of joys of making their own things and you know, gardening and all the things that you mentioned. I think that that's an interesting proposal. We already see, of course, that there's a thriving hobby industry. I mean, I have a community, I have a local garden in my backyard that I don't need to, you know, for food, but I do it for fun. And I think that many people will be attracted to that. One of the papers that we're publishing in the JET collection on Monday is by a Polish economist who argues that the state will be so fiscally constrained by the decline of income tax that people will have to turn to these kinds of non-monetary, you know, these peer-to-peer forms of exchange, and that there'll be a growth of local currencies, there'll be a growth of you know, people, the Airbnb, the people, you know, couch surfing, and all these kinds of non-monetary forms of exchange, because there will be less money. People will have less money because they'll have less jobs. The state won't be able to give them money because it won't have the income tax, and so forth. That's a kind of utopian version of how we might get to universal non-monetary economy without the radical abundance part. So I think that that is one of the scenarios that has to be considered, is that we may have an expansion of the non-monetary part of the economy.
Anyone else? I have a question, James, that do you think there's any possible alternate of a current economy of, you can say, current alternate of money that we earn due to employment or something similar way? Means if there's a possibility in transhumanism era that we can have something else in terms of money. Means we do not want to go for money or we have now. We are looking for some alternates. What do you say? What will you say on this?
Well, Douglas Rushkoff is one of the IET fellows, and he has written a book, now probably 3 books ago. For him, he's very prolific. But he wrote a book about the history of currency, of money, and his argument is that the larger currencies have gotten, the more people become disempowered and the more dislocating economic effects they have. Now, I'm a world federalist, and I've always been in favor of one world currency. So I found his argument very disappointing, because I believe politically that it would be a great idea for people to be united, you know, around the world in one government, one currency, and so forth. Yeah. But his argument is that we need the growth of local currencies because they support economies and they support human needs better than global currencies do. And so perhaps in the future we'll have both. We'll have global currency as well as local currencies. Now, I think beyond that, beyond the creation of local currency and reputation, there may be the possibility for things like reputation economies. And if you've ever seen Cory Doctorow's novel, Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom, which is set in a future Disneyland 100 years from now, he projects an economy called Woofies, which is a reputation economy that's maintained by artificial intelligence, basically, and the kind of connections that everyone has to their brains. So basically, you have an account of what your reputation is in society. You can kind of see this already with what we call the like economy, with people getting likes on their Facebook posts and their Twitter posts and things like that. Right. But you can imagine that in this future economy, that if you do nice things for people, you get an increase in your reputation, and then you get to spend that when you want something in particular, and it gets debited from your reputation account. And if you're a really bad person, your reputation account crashes. So this would be both a method of maintaining a nice society as well as having some kind of economic exchange. And I think that those kinds of ideas are also interesting and possible.
Yep. Anyone has? Thank you for answer.
Mm-hmm.
We can.
Yeah, I have a question, Siddharth.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. What is your view of balancing the employment in terms of increasing technology? Like Claude talked about the avatars. If we are going ahead with the avatars, we are going to cut the employment in terms of 1,000 of people. Like example of a British Telecom, nowadays they have started using avatar as a CSR, as a interacting with the people. Like they have any issue, they are going on a website and browsing it and giving concern, and avatar is giving back answer upfrontly. By this we are shortcutting like customer sales representative, like call centers and all. So what is your view on this?
So of this kind of outsourcing of labor, what effect it has on technology unemployment?
He's talking about the chatbot, I think. Chatbot introduction in the industry in place of actual human. So that you are asking, Kus?
Exactly, I'm asking in terms of employment. Actually, if one time we are talking about the technology, and we are decreasing the employment. In terms, it's a use. Yeah. So, what is your view on that?
Well, I think it's more or less inevitable, and I think if we can figure out how to slow the process so that it becomes manageable for society, it's not a problem. But I think we've seen in the United States, for instance, with the relationship of the Indian call centers to employment in the United States, there's a lot of resentment when some of these innovations take place. But in the end, call center work is not something that most people want to do for their lives, for their whole lives, and there are other forms of labor they would rather do. So any job that becomes subject to displacement by the kinds of technologies that you're talking about, I think in the end, people would rather do something else. And so we have to just figure out how they can transition to doing that something else with their life. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you.
I think I'd like to share a little bit more, expand more on that. It's not so much also call centers. It could be customer-facing jobs where, for example, if you've got things like I've been talking about a digital surrogate, which in fact is an avatar in essence. And if customers could actually see an avatar at a bank or anywhere out there interacting with them, you could have, I think in the meantime, one human manning literally 5 or 10 of them, depending on on workload, before some form of artificial intelligence takes over even the human operator. So I guess we probably have a gradual decrease in jobs for humans, but it is a warning sign, and it is something to look out for. That I think probably humans need to start learning how to code soon, as a way to kind of ensure some kind of job protection for the foreseeable future until such time when an alternative comes into place.
Well, even coding, of course, is subject to some of these trends. It's hard to see any form, law, you would think, would be a preserve in which human beings would have to be doing the work. But a lot of law has in the past been the process of legal discovery. So you you subpoena a bunch of documents from a corporation, and then you have to have lawyers go through them to figure out which ones need to be a part of the proceedings, and that could take months. Now you have artificial intelligence. You subpoena the electronic documents. You put artificial intelligence in place, and a lot of the legal discovery process has now been automated. There are electronic forms for doing a lot of legal work. So in the case of programming, I'm not as familiar with what's happening in terms of the automation, but I know that there are efforts to automate many of the processes that are involved in programming as well, so it's not as error-prone as human beings tend to be. So I mean, I have two children in college right now, and so having this perspective on the labor market is pretty depressing because I don't know what to tell them to pursue as occupations, or anyone to pursue as occupations that will be safe from automation. But my daughter wants to be an opera singer, although you know, it may be automatable. I don't think people will pay that much to see robot opera singers. So
that's true.
I have a question.
Yes.
Doc, I understand what you're talking about when you talk about technology displacing jobs. What I was thinking is, and I understand why you said that, I mean, thus far, going by the slides you presented, what I am asking is that given the current advancement happening in the development of the brain-computer interface technology, where sensors pick up our brain signals, brain waves, interpret them, and we can instruct the computers or any technology, like Muse, for example, one of the first products that's coming out, and technology being built into as a function in wearable computing devices. The question I have on my mind is, if we factor in the brain-computer interface where just by thought we can do something or create something, or without opening our mouths or using our physical bodies, using the mind, we can create things that we would otherwise not be competent to, and advances in programming technology where they interpret our thoughts and convert a lot of things more intelligently, would you think that would reverse the trend where rather than being displaced from jobs, we actually create more opportunities, commercial opportunities for ourselves, except for that perhaps it would be more entrepreneurial or technopreneurial rather than being in a job? But do you think it will stop the displacement or reverse the displacement?
Well, as I said, I think that human enhancement is going to be inevitable and is desirable, and that part of that human enhancement future, I imagine, will be brain-computer interfaces increasingly connected to our neurons and to the world. And to the extent that we get connected to artificial intelligence, we may be enabled to stay ahead of some of these trends, so that at least those of us in the world who have that advantage of being able to get that kind of connection. That's another part of the kind of digital divide dilemma that will face the world, is that if, you know, one doctor connected to artificial intelligence can do the work of 1,000 primary care doctors, or, you know, 1 million nurses or whatever, that will be technological unemployment as well. So highly enhanced workers may be able to stay ahead of the curve, but they may also displace as many workers as artificial intelligence would otherwise. But at any rate, to the extent that we can achieve those kinds of enhancements, yes, I do think there will be certain kinds of opportunities, employment opportunities, that will keep people in employment.
I think, yeah, it was a really good session, lots of questions, very big. Like, everybody enjoyed the conference, everybody enjoyed the content of the conference.
It's great, great.
Well done.
+1 for IFS.
Good job.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, we tried to have as many as possible on the Google Hangout, and then also there are quite a few people who have who saw the presentation on the YouTube. So okay. So,
would be nice if in the near future, in the very near foreseeable future, Avinash and Siddharth give us all business class tickets from wherever we are, fly us into New Delhi or Mumbai or Goa, Goa by the beach, and have a live full day one with nice drinks and also like
Hyderabad. Which is Hyderabad?
Non-alcoholic for the ones who prefer non-alcoholic, and alcoholic for those who prefer
Okay. So you are talking about such a financed conference. So you need to contribute. You need to make a donation.
Get Eric to sponsor it and tell them how they can become the world's leading airline with our insights.
Okay, so I mean, IFS has plans to have more money. You need some more money to conduct these things. So, and it takes time. It will take at least 5 to 6 months. And because IFS is the only organization in India who is working in these kind of things, so there is a possibility that we can organize such a good conference for you and be a host for you for this. So,
I've never been to Goa.
Yes, so thank you. I mean, you're welcome to come to India. I can host your visit here, but okay.
No, it's a good conference. Just kidding.
Okay. No, it will be more. It will be better for IFS as well to have that kind of event.
If I can give the invitation for all of you to write something for the IET about the topics that you've addressed, we're especially interested in the state of futurism outside of the English-speaking, well, India is also English-speaking, but outside of the usual US-centered worldview that we have. So if anyone wants to write for us, please let me know.
Yeah, sure, James. We will let you know if anyone interested in writing, or of course in the perspective of the future and in India itself. So
James, what you suggested, James?
James suggests. Yeah, go on, James.
Well, we have the IET website, iet.org.
Okay, IEEE. We have many authors in common, IEEE and IFS. There are lots of people.
He's willing that some of the Indians writers contribute to the
IET. Avinash recently went to a conference in Delhi, the capital of India, and he met many speakers. So maybe we can arrange them. There were lots of people we didn't hear about. So maybe we can convince them. We can convince some of our IFS to do that for IEEE.
Yeah, James suggested the same conference.
Yes.
Okay.
I wish I could have attended. It sounded like a great conference.
Yeah, it was. It's a more on philosophical side conference, but it was nice to meet some more fellow transhuman or the people who support the positive or negative side of transhuman. But I've got some contact. I got some contact, but we'll try to contact them for what they can do for us or what they can do for IIT or other places or support transhumanism idea. So,
okay, I have something to say. So
yeah, go on.
Okay, so this conference, this meeting was, I mean, this was the first event in which there are so many senior people involved from IFS in a single meeting, like Miriam, James, Ilya, Clyde, and our team members. So we have do you have any suggestion for us? Do you have any suggestion for us in terms of gaining more popularity or gaining more visibility and doing better work, or even for fundings? Do you have any suggestions for us?
Let's take the suggestion one by one from each of them. Start from Clyde.
Okay.
Yep. Clyde, any suggestions for us for this conference?
For me, I would say you guys reach out to the India, because I don't think anyone knows about the Indian Future Society. I think I have one in newspaper in Bangalore, I believe, DNA. But you need to reach out mainstream media like the Times of India and those kind of outlets to get people in. And of course, the drive to all the technology institutes in India, not just the IITs, the other ones out there, to start getting feedback from them, making them think more science. For me, I'm just speaking from a perspective of a writer and an author, and I'm seeing the kind of stuff that is being written by surprisingly by people from the IITs and all that. It's trashy novels. It's nothing to do with science. It's all about romance and really trashy stuff. We need to, I think, get them more on board on scientific thinking. It's amazing to me to see that some of the best stuff is being done by Indian guys or Indian as well, who are outside, who are in MIT, who are in places like Singapore. And why? Why? Because they're from India. They should be put in the limelight, or if they are, I've not heard. So there should be a limelight or a spotlight focused on coming from India. Maybe the India Future Society could be like the kind of like the like the band of Buddhists or something like this. So probably getting out to the media first would be my suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
Harish, thanks for suggestion, Clyde. Harish, what do you like to say?
More of these things, and I mean, pretty much I'm in agreement with what Clyde said, and I think I've mentioned this before. Have more events like these, conferences, publicize, educate. I think on what future studies is. In a country of less than 6 million, I'm having a lot of trouble telling people that future studies is not astrology. I think in India you're going to have, there'll be a little challenge considering that Indians have always studied the future in very different forms. So you need to start educating, and the only way to do that is by such means where you have such open discussions, events, conferences, seminars. And I think the project that Avinash told me about, where you're going to the institutes and having collaborations and MOUs and have on-campus activity, I think that's the perfect way, because you have like bright-minded, young minds, 18, 19, influenceable, who are ready to explore. You start them off on what this concept is, and it should be a function. It's a good start from there.
Thank
Harish,
you.
any suggestion about the funding for IFS?
You guys were going to make that BCI-enabled wheelchair. If you can come up with something like that, I'm sure you'll get a lot of sponsors, right?
Okay.
No, but seriously, that would be a very good idea, because I don't suppose anyone has done that yet, and I think a lot of the forecasts I've been doing in terms of this is before I started writing the BCI series of late. Is pretty much about brain-controlled exoskeletal suits and whatnots to enable the disabled, the weak, the sick, the elderly, or just basically to protect yourself from the elements in your environment or work environment. If you can come up with a wheelchair as a start for the purpose, the precursor, I think that will draw a lot to you.
Okay. Next we have Ilya.
Okay, first of all, I wasn't sure if you are supposed to talk openly about this crowdfunding initiative, but as you do, so I'll just support what Harish said. If you succeed, if you just start this project, it can be huge. It can really put you on the map, not just in India, but all across the world. That's something that is needed by many people and can be very widely promoted and be an important source of funding. And that's one. And the second thing, also specific, is also once again about our conference in Hyderabad. It's going to be interesting. There will be representatives from World Health Organization and government officials, and really hope to make this event kind of an excuse to bring the subject of longevity to India. So if you guys can bring some media attention to this event, or maybe alert some people that that could be good. That could be a good gathering point, and also media outreach point. So these are two suggestions for now.
We have published about the Hyderabad event in the IFS website. So we will try to distribute it to other newspapers as well. We will distribute it to other newspapers.
Yeah. Now we have great contacts with Indian media, and also have full support of the International Federation of Aging. So it's also an organization that is quite influential. So it could be good.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
Thank you, Ilya.
Thank you, Ilya.
So, Dr. James, what would like to add on these suggestions?
Well, one of the strategies that I pursued when I was the executive director of the World Transhumanist Association and now with the IAT was to target specific professional bodies or specific fields of disciplines that we were going to try to build ties to each year. So one of our first conferences was with bioethics. We co-sponsored with bioethics organizations and had basically, transhumanists meet the bioethicists and bioethicists meet the transhumanists conference. Then the next year was art. Then we focused on international development, and we pursued that strategy, and I think it was relatively successful. And we've been doing the same thing with the IAT. So this most recent conference we did was with animal rights activists, and they had very rarely talked about the future of their strategies with anyone, talking about robots or human-animal chimeras and things like that. I think one of the advantages of doing that is that then you have a very concentrated set of topics for a conference. I think futurism is so broad and brings in so many different kinds of disciplines that it's difficult for people who aren't, engaged in this the way that we are